Hello, everybody. Contrary to popular belief, as it says Sonic Talk 302 below me, is the one thing I forgot to sort out. It's actually Sonic Talk 303. Everybody, put your hands in the air. This is Labs Live Jam TB-303. You have absolutely no idea how hard it is to find just raw 303 loops on the net. Look at them, they're going crazy. Yes, folks, episode 303. I can't believe it. It seems like it's a very important number in music technology. And there it is, 303, yeah, episode 303. I can't believe we made it. I thought we should probably have a party, but we had a party not long ago at 300, so and I'm still recovering. Much thanks to Mr. Dave Spears, who I will go to first, because there he is at GeForce Software Central. In fact, I'd just like to say I've got the original G Media Music Oddity.
Oh my word, no! Imposca.
Screams like Imposca. Sorry.
Yeah.
Just
it's funny,
there.
isn't it? Yeah, I can. Yeah, I've still got a few of those.
I've still got a few of those as well. I break them out every once in a while. I try to use them for school events. Nothing like Screams Like a Bastard written across your T-shirt.
Yeah,
talking to parents you don't know very well,
people, yeah,
and then you realise it suddenly at the last minute. It's like, let me. No, but I won't explain. Never mind.
Yeah.
So Dave Spears, it looks like it's very sunny where you are, which is nice.
Yeah, it's nice outside. I've just been out.
As long as you don't have to work inside, obviously, then it's not so nice.
That's just nice having a window, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's true. It's a first for you. Of course, over here at Sonic Towers, it's dark.
It's cold. It's cold here, and I'll tell you how cold it is. The local bankers are walking around with their hands in their own pockets.
Hey! Yeah, that is a gag that's worth having, particularly when we think about one of the first topics that sort of sprung up on us earlier this morning. But I think we'll use that as a tease, because in the meantime, we'll go and say hello to. I'll say hello to Mark, and then we can join our mystery new guest in a second. Mark Tinley is over there.
You're looking all long again.
Am I? Yeah, it's weird. What seems to happen as soon as Skype gets involved, it does something to... I'm not long, I'm actually wide, which some may say is the truth anyway. Well, look, if I hold that up... Oh, no, that's all right. That's round, isn't it? So that must be okay. Yeah. So I'm okay. This is me normal. I'm no longer like...
Squished you, yeah.
This. How are you, Mark? Mark Tinley, like being sound artist, soon to be released album maker, in fact.
Yeah, I'm very well, actually. I'm quite excited by that. They've sold half of those box sets already, so that's really exciting, because that means that lots of people are going to listen to it, and that's really the goal, isn't it? So
just for those who perhaps don't know, this is the album that you did. What's coming up?
It's the what?
Well, the box set of what? You see, the people who
Mania.
TV Mania. That's right. It's the album.
It's a project which I did with Nick Rhodes and Warren Cucurulo. And it's on tvmaniamusic.com.
Excellent.
And it's pre-order. It's happening now, and it's available on March the 11th. But there's a limited number of vinyl box sets with lots and lots of vinyl and photographs with scribbling on from Nick and a handwritten note from Warren and all sorts of things. It's very exciting.
Excellent. Do you get to contribute anything exotic to that as well?
Am I what?
Are you contributing anything exotic to the box set while you're as well?
I haven't added anything exotic to it, but
I think you should maybe do some geotag. The coordinates to some geotag thing that you can leave somewhere, secreted in the countryside. That'd be quite thrilling, or maybe not. Anyway, Mark, thank you very much for joining us. And that chuckle there you've heard is a new guest in the form of Mr. Jem Godfrey, who is right there. Jem is looks like, well, I can tell you can tell he's got something to do with music because there's a guitar hanging on the wall, or is that a ukulele?
It's a little tiny travel guitar.
Ah, okay.
I have it there to give the impression I can play the guitar, which I can't.
But you can play the keyboards. Jem Godfrey has a fairly stunning career, working a lot, which is kind of impressive. And what I really like about the stuff that you've done is it's just so massively varied. I'm looking at your Wikipedia page, and there's just lists and lists of sort of real arch pop stuff. You know, writing songs, production, Atomic Kitten, Blue, Britannia High, Gareth Gates, the X Factor Mob, Samantha Mumba, Ronan Keating. I mean, you know, these are kind of like, you know, the pinnacle of pop. But at the same time, you're doing this kind of really impenetrable prog stuff with a band Frost and playing with kind of big names like Steve Vai and Joe Bonamassa, that kind of thing. So welcome, Jem.
Joe Bonamassa, I don't remember.
No, not Joe Bonamassa. Joe Satriani. I knew there was a Joe in there somewhere.
Well, hello. Yes, thank you. It's kind of I'll do anything to pay the mortgage.
Well, I know which ones would probably pay best, and that's probably the pop, especially if you're writing hit singles. You're the recipient of an Ivor Novello, I believe, right?
Yeah, it's kind of it's a sort of I still look back at what I've done and think that wasn't me, because it doesn't feel like it ever happened, really. It's kind of a weird sort of... It feels like it happened to somebody else. It's such a long time ago now.
Is it a very intense period, that whole kind of pop stuff? Or you know, I mean, it's looking like you haven't got the dates on all of it, but sort of early 2000, going up to 2005. So, I mean, you know, is it not still ongoing?
No, it kind of it's that thing of you get to a certain age or a certain amount of work, and then the pop machine kind of spits you back out the other end after it's put you in, and then pulls up all these other young people and sort of does that to them. So I did find myself sort of one day doing it, then the next minute I was kind of out the back door going, oh, all right, and that was kind of it.
Yeah, thank you. We'll call you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a funny old game, but it sounds like you were kind of operating at a fairly high octane level there. I mean, it's one of the things that I was really interested in is, you know, you obviously working with some of those X Factor type artists. I mean, what's that environment like? I mean, obviously, I imagine you've NDA'd up to the eyeballs, but that is general sort of, because a lot of those artists, you know, presumably only have 20 minutes because they're too busy doing morning TV and all the pop, you know, all the stuff that makes them the product, the music being maybe a little secondary in some cases, you know, to the demands on their time.
It was exactly that. I mean, there was one case in point where I think it was Atomic Kitten. There was literally they had to revocal something. And they arrived, and the cab waited outside, and I think they were there for about 35 minutes. They sang the bit, and they got strapped back in the cab and went off to a TV studio, and that was it. And it's kind of, there wasn't a chance to kind of...
get it right.
Yeah, it was just literally, you had one shot at the title, and then off they go. So it's kind of, yeah, it was just a sort of a whirlwind of that kind of, those kind of events all the time, really.
So do you get the work there because you can get the best out of the vocalists at that point? I mean, as well as all the other things that you have to do, or is there someone else there who comes in and kind of G's them up and gets them going? Or, you know, is that part of what you have to do as well?
It's part of what you have to do, yeah. You have to kind of be all, literally, because you sort of like beforehand, you're sitting there with a cup of tea and it's like 10:30 in the morning, and suddenly you have to go, oh, hi, and be all showbiz for 20 minutes, then they go away again, and you go back to having your cup of tea again. So it's kind of like, it's just a strange experience all round.
And firing up auto-tune. No, that's probably very unkind. I mean, because there is a common perception that basically there is no talent at that sort of pool level in that particular pop pool. But I'm sure that's not entirely the case. I mean, of course, you know, that particularly with stuff like X Factor, where people have to sing live. You know, obviously you get some donkeys there who just work on image, but you know, there's quite a lot of people who come through that actually can sing, but maybe don't get the kudos for it. Is that a fair thing to say?
Yeah, I mean, it tends to be, I mean, I don't know what it's like now, obviously, because I don't do it anymore, but it's kind of, there'd be like one or two people who could really sing, and then you'd get one or two people who could really dance, put it that way.
One or two people who could really look nice.
Yeah, exactly.
But they all have to look nice as well. But
so you tend to sort of focus on the people who can sing, but obviously, because if in the case of like a boy or a girl band, you would have to sort of share it around. So there would be, what's the word, greater or lesser DSP demands.
What's a three shark artist like, or do you have a kind of half a chip artist or a four chip artist?
Yeah, or a whole farm card artist. That kind of mentioning
that's a great way of rating, isn't it? You could actually it's the sort of internal industry way of rating the talents of a singer, is how much DSP is required to make them presentable.
Exactly.
What a brilliant idea. So what is it that you're doing sort of more of now? I mean, what's your kind of general day-to-day role, musically speaking? What is it that you're up to at the moment?
I do a lot of radio station jingly things. Do a lot of stuff. All Radio 2s, we did all the big thing of that last year. So we did all kind of big orchestras and bands and all kinds of stuff at Angel, and it was a huge, big deal. So that was do quite a lot of that, and also I've still producing. I've got, apart from my band, I'm producing a band called Losers, which has got Eddie Temple Morris, the XFM DJ, and Tom Bellamy from X of Cooper Temple Claws. We're just finishing that album. It's just kind of like, and then I'm mixing some other stuff. There's a girl called Chloe Alper who was in a band called Pure Reason Revolution. She's doing some new stuff. So it's sort of like it's just a big sort of spread of whatever's there really. It kind of keeps each thing from burning out too much. Yeah.
So you keep. Did I see somewhere in the credits also that you produced one of the Brits? There.
Hey, did I?
No, obviously not. Various artists, Brit Awards 2003 producer. Maybe that was actually a compilation album.
I think it's probably a compilation. I mean, my wiki entry. It's been a long-standing argument I have in Wikipedia. It's not actually that accurate. It's kind of it was kind of compiled I think by a big prog rock fan. So it tends to kind of go. There was some pop stuff, and then there was lots and lots of prog and but then some pop stuff. So it's kind of like I'm trying to say to Wikipedia, can we get it in balance? And they're kind of going, well, what about that? So it's a don't believe everything you read on that.
But you think after reading your Wikipedia entry, I started to get Wikipedia envy because there is no entry for me, just a sort of the occasional little trail of I was involved in a project, but I was thinking, is it really vain of me to actually sort of try and put the record straight, or do I have? Do you have to leave it to somebody else? I mean, I suppose you can't really do your own, can you? It's not. It doesn't seem.
You can't. I think you need. Go on.
I wrote my own, and I got into really bad trouble for it, and all the Wikipedia edit people came sending me messages and saying you can't say this about yourself, and you have to be able to verify this, and this is all conjecture and all sorts of stuff. So don't write your own; you'll get into trouble.
Really.
There's that thing, I think, with Wikipedia. I think it's actually, in a way, it's kind of cool to not have a wiki. It's wikinimity. Go for that.
I'm liking the sound of that. I've got a lot of wikinimity. So the done thing is, what you actually have to have is almost a superfan stroke stalker to be able to qualify for an entry.
Yeah, It's it would be cool to say that they're stalkers, but I think it's enthusiasts. It's a nice thing. It's a nice thing.
That's right. I can tell you're being very careful in this public forum here. Dave, you got a Wikipedia entry?
No, God, no. Thank goodness.
Maybe
you remember that hate mail I showed you because I missed Todd Rundgren off of the Chamberlain video.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Rundgren or whoever. No, somebody got
Grandma
really upset
Rundgren
about it, and he was like, you should go and name check. You should go and reference your Wikipedia entry against Todd's. Oh, what? You haven't got one? And it was just brilliant. So I was tempted to reply back going, dear Mrs. Rundgren, I don't want a wiki entry, please. But I didn't. I was very sensible.
Yeah, well, that's maybe what we should do.
You can tell, though, when I know several people who have written their own, and it is so blindingly obvious. They always write it, third person, and it's just like, it's so obvious it was you knob.
Do you think maybe we should have some sort of pact to write each other's?
Actually, that's a really good idea. Let's do that for next week.
Maybe what we should do is have a Wikipedia club. Mark just came in and said his computer restarted for some reason, and you'll notice my seamless video switching, accommodating the classic 2-row Skype to 3-row Skype video image there. I just, that's just how prepared I am in this instance. It was
effortless.
It was almost effortless, almost subconscious, almost perhaps unconscious even. Right, big news. I guess what we should probably start with is, this is the breaking news, and it's got a wonderful graph which is just down. Although when you look at the scale on the side, it's down from 7.6 to 6.8. It's not exactly a kind of, it's not exactly what you call a vertical. It just looks vertical on that scale. This is the news that Avid, the big bosses at Avid are in a bit of trouble, and there's various different lawsuits. I guess we've got to be careful what we say, although we never usually are, so I don't know why we should start here. They've basically been done for doing or being investigated for what does it say? It says potential violations of federal security laws and breaches of fiduciary duty by Avid and certain of its officers and directors. That sounds a bit like a lyric from Bedknobs and Broomsticks with the bankers to me, but yeah, this and really, I suppose, corporate shenanigans and bankers and finance. There's no great shock there, is there? It's not like we're kind of like, oh my god, I thought, because we know that Avid became incredibly corporate over recent years and have been, been embracing that whole structure. So I suppose we shouldn't be surprised. But what it does throw up is this sort of terrifying notion that it all might go away, and it wasn't helped by the fact this morning when Dave, I think you sent me that link, I went to check the website and it was just gone, nothing, and that's probably because me and everybody else in the world was checking the Avid website. So, but it kind of, what it does is create the sense of something really terrible happening, even though it might not actually be at all. I don't know what you use, Jem, in the studio. What's your weapons of choice? I mean, I guess you're talking DSP, so I'm presuming you use tools, yeah?
It's Pro Tools, yeah. It's Pro Tools 8, old and reliable.
That's interesting. So you stopped.
Well, I've got a Pro Tools 10 on my laptop, but I don't really use the laptop very much. But it's just, the thing is, there's certain plugins, like Virtual Guitarist, which is an old Steinberg thing from 1839. Yeah. I still occasionally, there's one sort of power chord thing that I do use on stuff, because obviously I can't play that guitar.
Was that you on the Ronan Keating stuff then? Jing, 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 jing. Is that it?
No, that's actually that we had a couple of quid, so we could afford to
got
use...
a real guitarist in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know. Okay, but I mean, does this sort of thing make you nervous, or do you care less? Because I mean, if you're working on an older version, it doesn't really matter, does it?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I think Avid's a very divisive word, isn't it? In many sort of musical circles, it kind of, you have a love-hate thing, I think, with Avid.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Yeah.
I don't think I would be very surprised if they fell over and that was the end of it. To be honest, I think there's, with these sort of judiciary things, there's always ways, alleged results that might happen. There's always ways of. I think the company's too big, it's too developed, it's too established, it's too old, it's too varied for it to fall over overnight. I just think it might.
Oh yes, of course. Yes, no, it's interesting you said that. I think actually at the bottom, it's not clear. I do write that. Of course, this is only an investigation. No impropriety has been proven. I'd just like to say. But we're all thinking, I'm sure there's some terrible business going on. But yeah, I mean, who knows, really. I'm just quickly going to switch here and get back to Mark, because he dropped off a sec. Let's see if we can get him. So, Dave, I mean, I guess not being a Pro Tools user as such, but someone who has to support it, does this make any difference to you, or does your heart leap for joy at the thought of maybe having to support one less DAW, even though, obviously that's not going to happen?
We keep getting asked, are we going to do AAX? I mean, it's constant. But at the minute, I'm just going, no, it's a format too far, frankly. I've got, obviously we've got a lot of history with Avid, and I think some of the employees were treated particularly badly in the whole transition. And I said my piece actually a while ago when we were talking about the share price plummeting. I recommended that the CEO hadn't quite found the correct vehicle for his talents. Could I suggest a hearse?
Well,
I was expecting to get into loads of trouble, and then I got loads of emails saying, well done, jolly well done. Well done for saying that. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, the first thing we did this morning was go onto the developer section, and that was still alive and kicking. So we were kind of like, okay, that's cool. But, I mean, it's amazing how quickly these, the rumour mill can spiral out of control.
Well, I mean, the worrying thing is, obviously, all that has to happen is a story, a website down for a minute, and then suddenly people are thinking, if that happens again, and they maybe even just considering an alternative, that sort of thing's gonna spread. And of course, people like us making terrible conjecture and writing news headlines and what have you, can't help. But I mean, the point is, it is quite big news.
It is news,
isn't it?
Yeah, it is news. I think that companies are generally doomed when they get those SAP systems. Do you remember those?
Computer says no.
Yeah, exactly, and that's really what it boils down to. Sometimes you can kind of go, "Is there any chance we can get paid this much?" It's a new SAP system coming online, and you're just like, "Oh man, that's it."
Yeah, I mean, I won't say the company, although you might guess who it is. We had the same deal that we said this is our new suppliers agreement. Here you are. It's generated by SAP. What you have to do is anything we buy off you, you have to agree that we don't have to pay you for 90 days. And I just went, well, no, that's really not okay. Unless you want to lend me a few grand to tide me over. No, absolutely not. So, and I think those systems are generally not very well geared for creative industries. In fact, I met a lady at a Christmas party who was a management consultant. And I was asking her about it all, and I think the question which seemed to result in the least answer in the swift kind of, so how many employees have you got? And then turning her head away was, so how do you measure the success of what you do then? And she couldn't really answer it and then left. So, it was just... it's just that. I know, Mark, you had a bit of there was a bit of a rant in the previous emails to I won't repeat the words that you used.
See where that went.
But
me and Rich got into a blinding argument about it, which was fabulous, actually.
Yes, Rich is very. But actually, Rich is off in Europe touring with Chic at the moment. He can't be with us, but he's been certainly communicating, and he ran something on his Facebook page, which was like, okay, so if I was to have to change doors, what would it be? There's been, and it seems to be, obviously this is not a scientific bit of research, but Persona Studio One seems to be getting a lot of love. In terms of what people might consider. I mean, obviously the coolest thing would be anyway, I don't know what, maybe onto that in a sec. But so Mark, what are your thoughts about this? I mean, it's a bit of a storm in a teacup, isn't it? Really?
I mean, having had that sort of argument with Rich said, "Are you angry at the whole world, Mark? Why do you have to be like this about it?" And I said, "No, I'm not angry with the whole world. I'm just angry with Avid." And then I sort of recognised. I mean, he has got a really good point, and his point is that he uses that as a tool for making music, and he upgrades it all the time. It gives him new features, and it gets better and better for what he wants to do with it. But my counterpoint to that is that I only need the tool to do what I want it to do, and I have no desire for it to do a whole load of other stuff that I don't need. And if I have a computer that's, I think my computer was 3 years old, and I traded it in for a new one, and suddenly the software that I bought 3 years ago, Pro Tools 8, stops working because I can't run it on my new computer at all. Or not without going on the internet and finding rather a lot of hacks to do it, which I'm going to admit to doing publicly, because I've paid for a software license and I'm not doing anything illegal. Okay, so I've found out there's a few tricks you can do to make the hardware work with Mountain Lion, and there's a few tricks you can do to make the software work with Mountain Lion, so I'm doing it. But I don't, and I noticed that Pro Tools 9 just won't run on Mountain Lion at all. It forces you up to upgrade to 10, and I don't want to pay $300, £300 even, to upgrade when it's not going to do anything new that I want it to do. I want to continue to be able to run my software at the level that I've been running it without having to upgrade.
Well, that's not necessarily necessarily the software's fault, isn't it? Isn't that the operating system making it difficult to maintain? That's more.
It could well be the operating system's fault. It could be that Apple perhaps have overlooked that letting people run Snow Leopard on their newest machines might be an option. It could be that. But I've used DigiDesign stuff for over 20 years, and what I've noticed with DigiDesign is that they have absolutely no sense of customer relation. It's just like, okay, we're going to just stop supporting this after 2 years, and we expect you to buy the next thing. If you just have to look at Microsoft. Microsoft have this model where they support the end user for 10 years. And then even when they tell you, we're going to stop supporting this product now, they create a legacy page. And if you wanted to, you could run Windows 98 and still find everything that was there to support it up until the point when they stopped supporting it. And then obviously the most important point is that if I bought a piece of software that ran on Windows 98, it would almost certainly run on 2000 and XP and 7 and 8. So I've got pieces of software which are like 10 or 15 years old, which I run on my PC because they never got upgraded, but they still run. So what is it that DigiDesign / Apple are, doing together in that mix that means that when I try to run Pro Tools 8, it just makes my machine go mental and locks up all of... I mean, the only way I could get it to run was to take certain parts of the hardware drivers out and to make sure that the DigiCore wasn't in there and stuff, and just that it was talking directly to the software.
Right. I mean,
if
for that...
tries to talk to the hardware, it gets all screwed up.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of a tricky subject. I mean, it's hard to know where the blame lies, but I mean, I think, if people moan about Avid, I think Apple could be probably even more so, because that's one step up, which is just like, right now, none of this is going to work anymore, so therefore you have to find your own way.
They're due when they took eMagic over in our domain, the music domain. They made sure that the eMagic stuff was available for a really, really long time. So it was always there. There was always a legacy page where you could go and download version 5 onwards, I think. So you could even download the PC version. And they continued to support the PC version for a long time after they bought that software.
Sorry, Sinners Pocklington Music in the chat room is saying, just don't buy any software beginning with A.
That's a great idea.
So what does that rule out? I don't know. I mean, Jem...
I've just got to say something else, though, because Adobe Photoshop CS2, they had some huge problem with supporting Adobe Photoshop CS2 users, and the registration system failed. And it meant that anybody that had a registered version of CS2 couldn't download it or register it or make it work. So Adobe have given away the serial number for CS2, and they basically made a download page for that piece of software, and they said, if you feel that you've got a right to run this, basically, if you've got a license for it, here it is free, just download it and use it. Thank you.
Oh, really? I don't think...
Why can't Avid or DigiDesign do that? Why can't they say, oh, here's Pro Tools 5, anybody can have that for free now, and here's Pro Tools 6? Because...
Yeah.
I mean,
well, it's interesting though. I think I think it's down to this whole idea of, because Adobe were corporate probably much earlier than any of the other creative sort of suite of softwares, whether it be graphics or music. They became a much bigger kind of company, much more early on in the development of software and this whole digital publishing and market. So they've probably learned how to do it properly. Whereas it seems like Avid were taken over by the sort of classic venture capital CEO. Will have the figure out in there. He'll help us make the sale price and the share. It didn't seem like it. This is. I'm no financial expert. Clearly, otherwise I wouldn't be sitting in here in a ropey old jumper. But that's what it seems. It doesn't feel right. So much. And
that's the exact thing. You don't need to say anything else. As a customer, I feel like they basically couldn't give a monkeys about my end user experience, and whenever anything's gone wrong with them, you have to jump through bloody hoops to get hold of the right person. And they seem to be an oversized company that are delivering, I know they got their finger in many pies in the video editing, and they've got
I think their live stuff is probably the most successfully publicly interfaced, customer interface side of things, because it has to work on experience and it has to work on has to work absolutely conclusively. I know, Jem, your system, you run your Pro Tools 8 system, right?
Yeah.
Do you ever, how do you work that into the scenario where, because presumably you're working with other artists and other sessions come in, can you translate things between them, or do you just kind of, stem it out and start from scratch? Or,
I do. It depends. A lot of the people I work with have Pro Tools in various forms. The only thing I'm starting to have now is this whole backwards compatible issue, where Pro Tools 10 sessions don't work on 8 or 9. So this sort of like I did, we shot a DVD with the band at Rockfield in Wales on start of the year. Got all the files back. I was like, oh, brilliant. And of course, everything there was Pro Tools 10. So I couldn't do anything about it. So thankfully, because I had Pro Tools 10 on the laptop, I could convert them. But it's just that kind of, it's a sort of relentless march, isn't it, of technology. And I think Mark's point about having older versions of Pro Tools available for free is a brilliant idea. I don't see why that couldn't happen.
Well, the other thing that was came up on Rich's page, his Facebook page, when he was asking for sort of what alternatives of DAWs, was the first person basically to write a Pro Tools translator. So you just go, right, give me any session, any version, I can translate this pretty much exactly, apart from obviously, if there are specific plugins that are only going to work.
There is one, isn't there?
Is there?
Yeah, there is one. Or there's more than one, but there's one which is considered to be quite good and used because of
isn't it made by
I had to get
SSL?
Pro Tools working again, so I can access some of my older projects, and I did consider that. It's about $200.
I think it was made by SSL. I seem to remember it was a very smart German coder, because I remember seeing it at Messe a few years ago, and it was this just session. I can't. Maybe the chat room might know. Obviously, it hasn't reached a wider market. The chat room basically said it's AA Translator is the one, but apparently that won't do Pro Tools 10. You were saying, Mark, is that right?
I'm just looking at the website for it, and I do remember looking at this and noting that it wouldn't do Pro Tools 10 and thinking it might be worth purchasing after it can. But the other thing it doesn't do is Logic either as well, actually. But so it's more about translating between different video formats than it is about translating between audio, I think.
I can't imagine a less thankless task than trying to get the minutiae of importing DAW sessions into a bunch of people who listen to things on headphones and go, no, it's not quite, it's got to be a starting point. But that sort of thing has got to be, it's got to be a go. And maybe, something that's going to happen. Surely it would be very helpful. I'm sure, Jem, you're going to find that sort of thing pretty useful, aren't you?
Currently I don't have any plans to upgrade from Pro Tools 8 at the moment because it works. So
yeah, I didn't have any plans to upgrade from it. My computer just decided that it wanted me to upgrade because it stopped working. So
how unfortunate.
I ended up in a situation where I had to choose to buy another computer, and I thought I'll buy the fastest one I can get in like the smallest possible format. So I bought a Mac Mini, and of course it runs everything now. I've solved all the problems I had.
Oh, sorry, there's a bit of 303 just came in there. That was just spontaneous 303ism. Remember, of course, folks, this is episode 303. Although we've been talking about Avid for a little while, maybe... There we go, here's some more. Hands in the air, everybody. That'll be the poster frame right there, folks. I can see it. This again is the sound of DY Labs Live Jam TB-303 SH101 on TR606. As I said, absolutely impossible to find any kind of naked 303 loops that I could just kind of trigger. I was thinking of using it as amusing punctuation rather than slightly awkward, lagging kind of playback from SoundCloud that didn't quite come in on time. As it turned out.
Rebirth or something.
I was going to say, have you not got a copy of Rebirth knocking around there, Nick?
No, have you? I mean, the thing is, all my computers are sort of maxed out trying to kind of actually just cope with the production. Yeah, on my phone, I haven't got a phone like that. Mine's an Android. All right, don't rub it in. And my iPad is a vintage iPad and doesn't run anything anymore anyway.
Vintage iPad. My God.
Vintage iPad.
I am really old now.
Yeah, vintage
Have
iPad.
You got that TT303 thing then, Dave?
Yeah, Dave, you were going to get a TT303, weren't you?
Yeah, I was. But they said it was going to be in on the Friday before Christmas. So I said, fine. And they were going to call me. And they never called me. And they never emailed. And they never wrote. Oh. So I bought a VP. So we bought a VP330 instead.
Right.
Oh.
The temptations is just too much. There's too much gear out there just going, buy me, buy me. So we got to I figured that the TT will probably be around for a little while.
It will. Or, of course, you could possibly take a look at... am I going to play the right thing here? One of these. Actually, this sounds a bit more 303 than the 303 in certain places. Everybody, hands in the air. Let's rock out to a virtual realization of a synthesizer. It's the obligatory dubstep section. Yeah, that's enough of that. Too much like good fun, or not. I don't know. Oh, there's two of me there. This is, yes, of course, the new Rocket synthesizer from Waldorf, which has been just announced. Oh yeah, of course that's not going to work either. I'll just have to fly by the seat of my pants again. Since that crash, all my screen capture and everything has just gone down. But anyway, this is the new Waldorf Rocket synthesizer. It's a small desktop-sized thing, virtual with digital oscillators. Very basic by the looks of it. Envelope, just a sustain and release portion. But it's going to be €204 plus the VAT in the UK, which is next to nothing, frankly. And it's got, I don't really understand, it seems to be a monosynth with a potential 8 unison oscillators, but you can play those in a chord as well. So it's a policy. I'm not quite clear about how that works. But Dave, have you fathomed it out?
No, I'm sorry, I didn't really get a chance to read this. I heard it sounded all right, and I saw the price and thought, ooh. But I think I have to sort of start restraining myself, really, because before my room's finished, it's going to be just overflowing. So, but it's small. I like small. Small could be good.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of bored of all these load of synth demos that just try and sound as tough as possible. In fact, I want to do completely the opposite. I just want them to sound lush and beautiful.
Pads.
Yeah, you know, when you sit down behind a synth and it suddenly kind of speaks to you and sounds beautiful and like being, I coined the phrase, but like being wrapped in cotton wool by an army of supermodels. That's what I want out of a synth.
Yeah, I mean, I'd want that out of almost anything, not just a synth, frankly. But yeah, well, it sounds like it's 8 voices that goes into one filter apparently. So that's, you know, so it's not multiple watts. But there's obviously people are getting a bit arsey because they're saying, well, yeah, what about Pulse 2? I thought we were going to get that, you know. And this is all, I guess, you know, something that they can make that they can sell bucket loads of and do it quick, and that's got to be a good thing. So we're probably going to see it, a music messer. Jem, you're into synths. I mean, I've noticed you've done some rather splendid stuff for the Korg Kronos.
Yes.
Is that what you play live?
Kronos, as they say.
Kronos.
I do play it live. Yeah, I'm kind of. I was just saying for Dave. For every I'm looking at Dave's studio there. For every wonderful piece of loveliness he buys, I'm trying to redress the balance of the force. I've just bought the tattiest. I don't know whether you can see it. A tatty D70 there, Dave.
Oh, I like D70s.
Oh, lovely.
Prologue. What a great sound. That's a good patch.
It still works, this thing, but it's kind of it's
had a nice feeling keyboard, I remember.
That's why I bought it, because I need. This is the thing with the Kronos. My if I did have a criticism of it, for doing live stuff, I really like to have a simplistic setup. I don't like having lots of keyboards around, and the 61 is too small, and the 73 I don't like piano action. Really, it's not good for me for live, and the only compromise I can find is to basically have the Kronos over one side, but use something like the D70 keyboard because you've got splits and things going on.
Yeah.
So kind of it's sort of. I mean, it's again. I love the sort of the synthesizer side of things, and I totally agree with Dave about these. You know, these kind of all these little boxes coming out that just kind of go, you know, and it's just sort of you kind of get a bit. It's a bit like, yeah, all right. And I actually downloaded the manual of this thing, as it's my first appearance. I thought I'd do a bit of homework and be all glam. But I know what you mean.
Thank God for you.
Whether it's actually is it a single oscillator or is it 8? Because it sort of says. It says on the thing here, it says here, all 8 oscillators will play the incoming MIDI notes. This will you allow playing chords. So is it a single oscillator? Is it 8 oscillators? I don't know. It's hard to
Yeah, I did the demo. I did that as well. I couldn't quite figure it out. I mean, it says on the page, but look, it's kind of like dark chocolate and lime green.
Yeah.
So forget about all that other stuff.
It's like a mint.
A mint. It reminds me of those lime boiled sweets with chocolate in the middle.
Mint matchmakers, I was thinking of.
Ah, interesting idea. So, I mean, clearly, Jem, I mean, when you buy a new synth, I mean, what is it that, you know, do you tend to work in soft or, you know, because you live in London and so therefore everybody's got a tiny place to live, so you can't stack it full of masses of synthesizers, presumably. So do you reach for the software or do you tend to kind of go, oh, you know what, I could really do one of those?
Have you been reading my Wikipedia page again? I live in East Sussex.
Yeah, probably. Well, over there in the east.
Yeah. It's. I mean, the soft synth. This is the thing. I think for studio use, soft synths are great. But again, it's this thing of I actually cleared out all my plugins folder the other week, because you end up, or sometimes you sort of, you think, oh, I need a pad or something, and you call up the plugin folder, and it's just like, you get like plugin blindness or sort of,
it's actually quicker just to program something on a synthesizer.
Yeah, so it's half and half. I mean, it's like it's if you need a pad, you're only going to need, it just needs to be like some sort of sawtooth thing with a bit of filtering, and you can do that in anything really. So it kind of, it's whatever's quickest, because thankfully, because I'm too busy most of the time. There isn't really time to delve into stuff like that. So it's kind of like, I think synths just tend to be quicker. I think hardware synths.
And so what is it that you're so is that the Kronos in the studio, or have you got a kind of selection that you tend to use?
Again, I don't like clutter, so I've literally just got the Kronos here. I've got the D70 here just at the moment, which will, once I've done this gig coming up, I'll put it in the attic. And that's pretty much it really. And then I'll just use sort of soft synths as and when. I don't really have sort of that kind of fetish about instruments anymore. I think it's my advancing age.
Just whatever will do the job.
Yeah,
I think that's right, because I think intent has an awful lot. It counts for an awful lot in an awful lot of fields, and the intention of what you were going for, rather than being absolutely perfect about it, can often be enough. Particularly in stuff that is, not front and center. If you're doing lots of jingle stuff, then that's going to be over and quick, and a lot of it's about the message rather than necessarily about the minutiae of the synth pad used.
And also it's that kind of there's I've learned a lot from doing this thing with Tom Bellamy. I've learned a lot about I used to sort of not do a lot of manipulation of stuff. Like, he's brilliant at taking like a string sample, then sticking it through a filthy dirty distortion, and then filtering that, and then putting delay on it, and making all this kind of this whole other sound. And I started doing a lot more of that, a lot of just sort of taking a very basic sound and then just ripping it to bits.
Interesting. Okay. And do you use controllers at all, in terms, or are you kind of very much on screen?
I'd love to, but again, this is one of the things about Pro Tools. It's not really, there's not like a surfacey kind of thing. I mean, there's their great high-end $200 million desks, which I don't have the space or the cash for. And I always find that sort of like the sort of mapping innovation stuff is always a bit hit and miss, and it kind of, I don't know, it'd be nice if there would be some sort of, I'd love a control surface, because for automating plugins it'd be brilliant, but I tend to just do a lot of mouse
grab
stuff.
It and just do it, yeah, interesting. I know, Mark, are you thrilled by the idea of this? I mean, Waldorf Synthesizers, they've got a kind of big following, and there is a sound. This, to me, sounded a little more characterful than perhaps the Blofeld, which is, but I don't know, really.
Yeah, I like the massive Waldorf synthesizer.
Oh, the Wave.
Kind of, the one with the red knob on it.
Yeah.
Because the red knob's nice.
Yeah, of course.
And if this is brown and green, maybe it looks like a humbug. I don't know.
Well, yeah.
But, I think probably the important thing is the sound, and listening to that little demo on YouTube, I was like, whoa, okay. I mean, I liked all the noises that it made. And they're like small, really small, but really kind of loud, sort of in your face, bright, harsh sounds. And
yeah, that's pretty much what they're...
I want a synth that can do that better than the ones I've got. But it might be that I'm going to be 50 in 3 weeks' time, and my ears have stopped working, because I played something to my partner the other day, and I said, what do you think of this? And she was like, ow, why is it so bright and trebly? And I'm like, is it? It sounds all right to me.
We've got a bit of a buzz going on there. I'm not sure who that is. Is that you, or is that Dave? Dave, I remember that happened on your USB mic.
I'll just mute.
No, it's not you. Mark, can you mute a second? Sorry about this, folks.
It's gone.
It's Mark. You might have to replug your mic a second.
Oh, it's a headset.
Oh, it's gone now. That's all right. Yep. Panic over, everybody. Everything's all fine. Anyway, this is going to be out. Let me see. Where is it? It's going to be out soon, sometime. And it looks like
I hear one in the flesh.
Yeah, I think. Well, we'll be going to Music Messa at the beginning of April, so we'll get a chance to see one, I'm sure, and check it all out. But yeah, it's got up to 8 oscillators for unison oscillators. That sounds quite interesting. It'd be nice if you have, obviously, the ability to pan and sort of modulate those kind of things, because those are the things that make things sound huge. What else? I mean, it looks all right. But there's also, while we're in the world, for those who like hard, there's also soft too. This is the new, well, it's a teaser from Native Instruments. Oh, Jesus. Revolutionary. Coming soon. The future of sound. I'm wondering, there's all sorts of guesstimates about what that might be. I mean, maybe it's just going to be Reactor 6. Could be, maybe they've, or was it 7? The next reactor, shall we say. I'll future-proof that statement. Or is it going to be something like, Razor or whatever, which actually Razor was a really good synth. I did a review of it. It had some fantastic vocoders in. But again, I mean, from what I heard there, it sounded like quite a fulsome waveform. I mean, whether that's done by EQ or whether that's the raw voice, it's hard to tell. But Native Instruments synths can be quite interesting. The whole reactor thing is I find particularly interesting. The whole idea of prototyping these complex synthesizers in a kind of development environment and then compiling them into instruments, I find really fascinating. And I know that'd be pretty cool, wouldn't it, Dave? If you had a sort of super synth that you could just make everything else in without having to have it coded. Isn't that like the dream scenario for a software developer?
Yeah, I guess it could be. I don't know. It's weird, isn't it? I started to listen to this. I thought it sounded interesting. In fact, I was listening to it on the phone on the way home from somewhere last night. I thought it was interesting. Again, everything's got to be tough and like
screaming. Yeah,
it all is. Which is, obviously been a kind of big thing in software. Make it sound tough without sounding particularly disgusting. They broke a few rules in my book. I mean, Revolution. Oh God, how many times have we done it with this? I mean, it could only have been worse if Jordan Rudess had kind of popped his head up underneath and went, "It's great, man." But I like what Native Instruments do, so I'll be interested to check this out. My point, and in answer to your question, really, is that it's not necessarily, for me, it's not necessarily about having this thing where you can cobble together like everything, a choice, a combination of everything. Because for me, the beautiful thing about old gear is its architecture and the way it works and the way we've talked about it a million times, the way these limitations force you to think in different ways and do different things and stuff like that. So, the first time I ever was put in front of an Arp Odyssey, took me like 20 minutes to get a sound out of it, because you need to know where to introduce that waveform into that audio mixer and stuff like that. And it's those things, it's mastering those things for me is a kind of thing of joy. Just going, oh, it's this oscillator and you can put it with this filter and it's like this, doesn't really kind of do it for me.
Yeah, I like the idea of the notion of being able to mess things up. That's what I like about the modular stuff. In fact, we had a chap in today who was just showing how to use our CMS, because he's going to post a few kind of blog things. And I've lent him a couple of my Uriac modules, and he was going, oh yeah, I was doing this. I was taking the square wave output of the Vulcan modulator and triggering an envelope. So it sort of did that. And I was going, really? Oh, that's an interesting idea. I didn't know you could do that. And give me an idea for a series, which is just like weird shit you can do with an analog, with a modular system. Did you know you could plug this into that and try this and try that? And you kind of, I guess with Reactor you can do that sort of thing, but with fixed architecture synthesizers, it's much more tricky, isn't it? I mean, some routings and modulations are fixed, and some you can come up with, but that kind of pre-routed stuff is it's a double-edged sword. It's kind of easier to get stuff out of, but it's also less easy to go off-piste, as it were.
Yeah, I'm kind of showing my age, I guess. I mean, I remember a time when there was this one guy who was just known, who I was lucky enough to work with for a period of time, who was just known for, he's the guy who can make a CS80 do these things. And of course, people, even old CS80 users were going, oh, how does he do that? How does he do that? And it's just, I love that kind of, you're so immersed in an instrument that you know that. And my dream is to be immersed in every single old synthesizer.
I suppose that's one of the problems. I mean, the thing that you were saying, Jem, is like you just don't get time for that sort of thing. I mean, is there perhaps room for sitting around, right, okay, I got half a day, what I'm going to do is make a load of sounds in these instruments and then use them later? I mean, do you get a chance to do that?
I do. I mean, I've got 4 young kids, so no. Is the short answer to that.
No, I don't know how you find time to do anything. In fact, what you're doing here, isn't it time to pick them up from school?
Well, I was supposed to be at a parents' afternoon.
Do you want to borrow my T-shirt?
I said to my mum, I said, I've got a terribly important phone call to make. So
yeah.
She doesn't know how the internet works, so she'll never know. Anyway, it's I don't know. I mean, I remember when we were at school, for some bizarre reason, the school bought an MS-20.
Wow.
It was this thing, and it used to sit in the music room, and it took me 6 months to get it to make a noise. Literally every sort of Tuesday afternoon there'd be a music lesson, and eventually I did manage to sort of make. I sort of did that, and I went. I was like, so I think there is, I don't know, with Reactor, it's sort of there's something very nice about the physicality, as Dave says, about of actually sort of interfacing with a device that generates noise. I think with Reactor, I'm slightly wary of it, mainly because my Mac's so old, it tends to make my Mac crash. So it's kind of I don't know. It's sort of the time for sitting down and actually programming patches. It tends to be the kind of, I think it's the sort of Nick Rhodes sort of way of you start with something and then you just rip it to bits until you end up with something else. I don't ever sort of tend to sit down and go, right, I'll take that and put that and do that there, and because I'm not very bright, so that's the main reason. So
I'm sure that's not the case, but maybe there's room. I mean, I know spoke to somebody about this before, the idea of doing a modular soft synth. So effectively, you just release racks and you plug them all together that way. I don't know, Mark. I don't know whether Native Instruments stuff features much in your life, or whether it's likely to, based on what you've seen here.
I do have the sampler Contact. Is that?
Yeah. Of course, yeah, that is.
Oh, hang on, yeah, I do have that. That sounds quite good. See, the thing is, because you've put these two videos on at the same day, so there's a contrast there for me. I actually like the sound of the Waldorf one better, but it's. I mean, unless I sat down in front of it and fiddled around with it, I've no idea what's going to come out of the Native Instruments one. I've just heard some sounds.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty broad or big statement to say that this is the synth that's going to own them all, because you're going to convince me that this can go into like Prophet Land and Oberheim Land and Roland Jupiter and Roland Juno and Roland, like, more SH101, TB-303. It can cover all those bases, and then when you think about sample and synthesis as well, it's going to like go there as well, is it? I mean, that's a huge.
It's quite a statement, isn't it? It's quite funny. There was a comment on the YouTube video just after it was posted, which is like, "Oh, fantastic! So this will be the synth that changes my life, makes all my music sound fantastic, and will be the future of everything." Not like the last one, which unfortunately didn't live up to that expectation. But this time, it's going to be the one, which is obviously.
Well, it's also the other thing. I think you kind of, if there is a synth that does everything, wouldn't it actually be rather boring?
Yeah, I think it would be. I think it would be kind of.
Well,
boring.
no, I don't think it would, because I want to be able to take all the different bits of different synths, and I mean, it would have to be modular. So you'd have to be able to go, I want to try that Roland filter on that. That Oberheim waveform. But what would happen if you put the Roland LFO through a waveform and used it as an audio waveform or whatever? I mean, I'm just making it up as I go along. But I mean, the idea that I could take elements of everything and put them all in there together. And let's not forget that Technics thing that had the body of a piano and the resonator of a guitar in it, because if this synth is going to own everything, it has to do that properly. So if it did that properly, then
so really they've set themselves an incredibly difficult task. We'll see. I mean, obviously it'll probably do dubstep all right, because Native Instruments seem to own that particular sphere with Massive and what have you. But I mean, even though I really thought Razor was brilliant, an additive synthesizer, it very much like the sort of thing that you would flip through presets, and then the 4 controllers you've got mapped, you just wiggle with those and you'd have some real time, which is an approach and it's not necessarily problematic. But then you get, I mean, maybe some of the things that happen in the dubstep world are just innovative uses of tempo-based automation, that kind of create the sounds that we wouldn't be able to, to do that on a real synth. It would be quite difficult unless you had the full modular control and, blah, blah, blah. So you can, I suppose that's why you get the innovation in those sounds. But we'll see whether or not...
I went off dubstep yesterday.
Went off it completely?
Completely went off it, yeah. Because I like
Yesterday.
innovation, and my whole character's all about being different, and I like being different to everyone else. So I sort of liked dubstep for a bit because I thought it was different. But when I noticed that they've brought out an album called "This Is Dubstep 2013," I thought, hang on a minute. Now it's just like one of those, now music kind of completely hugely mainstream.
Well, also they put a
things.
dubstep.
It's like,
They put a dubstep label on the Novation Mini Nova, which means it's over, isn't it? When it's kind of been categorised into a patch step. Yeah, pub step. I think we've talked about pub step before, haven't we?
I mean, I love all the sounds, but I just,
I do, and I don't. I mean, as I said, I think I said the same gag last week. It just sounds like somebody who wanted to play didgeridoo but couldn't learn it and figured out how to make a sound a bit like that in a synth, and that's what a lot of the dubstep stuff is.
Yeah, I suppose it's
that kind of just oscillating scream is like, oh really? Oh yeah. It doesn't really. It's not no longer innovative. In fact, it was
snores actually even.
Yeah, actually no, there was snore step. Maybe that's the answer for the next thing. It's not quite so catchy as pub step though, is it?
Snooze step. That's
Snooze
me.
step, yeah. Okay. Well, speaking of innovation, or perhaps not, I'm not going to play anything here because I got into trouble from the clip I played last week of the BBC thing, New Order doing a bit of Blue Monday. They clobbered me with a copyright notice, which I've actually said no, it's fair use because it was for comment. It's not like I was playing it and passing it off as my own. It was like we were talking about Blue Monday, and so whether or not they sue my arse and close the YouTube channel is still down to, we'll see in the future. But, so I'm not going to say anything about this, but I will, I'll show a web page because I think that's all right.
Can we hum it?
Yes,
I don't know, can you? That's a good question. I really like the intro to this video, but if I play it, I'm probably going to end up in trouble. This is new Bowie stuff, which is the stars are out tonight, which is a really interesting video, sort of set in, it looks like kind of crumbling LA apartment or Florida or something. It looks like it's on the Florida front, that sort of slightly Art Deco thing, and a lot of weird androgynous people, including what's Tilda Swinton, who looks fantastic in this and dresses up nice and kind of just behaves in a very strange fashion. Great video and quite interesting, but the press are going crazy for it. The greatest rock and roll comeback in history, according to the Independent's Andy Gill. Neil McCormick of the Telegraph also gives the record's top marks, calling it emotionally charged, musically jagged. I mean, and these are all great things. I mean, for an artist of such longevity, that's pretty cool, right? I mean, I'd like to be able to kind of get at least one critical praise along those lines when I'm his age, which isn't obviously too far away. Not that I'm making any music. Rich, it's a shame Richard's not here because Rich worked on one of the Bowie albums. In fact, there's a great picture of Rich with Dave, and Rich has got a fantastic hairstyle of the period, and it's a great photo. David Bowie, have you checked out any of this stuff, or are you kind of does it bother you? Are you bothered?
No, not really. I don't know. I kind of listened to that single. I checked out a few things. It's all right. I still think the best thing he ever did was that thing with Ricky Gervais. Funny little fat man,
Laughing
man
gnome.
who sold his soul. Yeah, I mean that just killed me. In fact, when this single came out, I just put that up on my Facebook. It was like best thing he ever did, and loads of people were kind of going, it was pretty much polarized opinion there. But no, I thought your observation was quite interesting, though. The fact that people do return to basics.
Well, yeah, this is the other idea. Obviously, this is a song-based album. From what I've heard, I mean, I've only heard the one. It's not got the production bells and whistles. And artists that seem to be, working in pop for a long time or whatever, tend to get to a position where they just they can't be asked with all the kind of, the dubstep sound or whatever. They just go for the song. And that's, they all seem to gravitate back to that. And it's just the basic factor of the song. And no, Jem, you kind of written a number of ditties. Do you find your approach to songwriting has changed over the course of of your kind of songwriting career so far? Are you kind of thinking in different terms now?
I think, with the pop stuff, I don't think the thing with that is it's a popular misconception that some of that stuff is actually what we want to write. Sounds bizarre, but a lot of it is what you're told to write by the A&R man.
Right.
So a lot of it is like, remember there was one sort of it went through a phase of all lyrics must be happy. can't be about, heartbreak or loss or death or anything. It must always be, oh, you're brilliant, oh, I love you. Ooh, and it's and it was all, and that can be very restrictive, which is one of the reasons why when I did Frost, it was just so massively opposite from that, because I was bored of just doing 4 chords. So I thought, I have 64th notes and I'm going to do all this and it's going to be magnificent. And I think songwriting these days, it's quite heartening that people are writing more eclectic material, and it's actually being critically well received and actually selling. I think it's one of the good things about the arguable demise of music via the internet is I think people actually have a chance to hear loads of stuff now. People who necessarily might previously have said, I just like this, they now go, well, I like a bit of that, I like a bit of that. And I think songwriters have responded to that as well.
I think maybe there are more songwriters now who realise that they can make money by writing pop songs. But the fact is that if you're good enough, you can write something fairly subversive in a pop nature. In the pop that is kind of weird. I mean, there was that James Arthur track, which, I thought, oh, that's all. And I listened to the lyrics, and it's like really bloody dark. It's kind of, and it's quite interesting that you can do that, and you still, it's just more challenging, perhaps, to try and get it across and filter through all of those kind of, like you say, those A&R requirements.
Yeah, I think it's still melody for me when I'm songwriting. Melody is still the kind of the kingpin of it all. It doesn't matter really what you fill around the bottom of it, but as long as you kind of, the songs they're there for a reason. They're not, I'm not really a big fan of stuff that just kind of is sort of like one note or just a lot. It's a difficult. It's a sort of difficult way to quantify it, because obviously a lot of stuff that does very well has fantastic melody, and I still do think, even going back to sort of the Beatles kind of era, that it's still about that melody and the effect it has on you. And I think the good thing about that is you can pretty much sing whatever you want as long as it's catchy,
Or as perhaps the sentiment of that one line you remember has the essence of what the melody conveys as well, and they sort of come together, I suppose, is the way. So do you write on a piano, or do you kind of come up with chunks of music and then work over that? I mean, or a guitar? I mean, what's your sort of process?
It depends. A lot of it, sometimes I can write it in my head, which is quite nice. That's only a recent sort of development. Sometimes it's frantic. I'll ring the answer phone if I'm in the house. I come up to it and go, oh God, and all my dictaphones and stuff are in here. So I know I've got these messages in me going, it's me, 7:15, and of course, it's either that or it's in the middle. The worst one is it's in the middle of the night, and I actually take the dictaphone and I have to sing it so quietly that I listen to it, and all I can hear is, I think, what is this? So it depends. It's sort of piano sometimes, bit of guitar, because sometimes there's sort of, I'm playing an instrument at the moment, which is a thing called a kelstone, which is a 9-stringed tapping instrument, which I've tuned in fifths. And the good thing about that is because it's sort of so alien to how I normally play, I'm coming up with all kinds of new and interesting chord sequences and riffs. And I think sometimes with songwriting, it's nice to sort of challenge yourself and push yourself in a different direction, try a different instrument, just sort of whatever works, really.
Excellent. I'm very envious of the fact that you listen to your inner song and actually do something about those things. I used to do that. And then I had the same thing. I'd be listening to this kind of dictaphone stuff and I think, what the hell was that? And in my head, I was thinking look, I can't be more explicit than this. I've described this almost to the final fade in my sort of weird dictaphone head mode. And then when I listen it back, it means absolutely nothing. I know. Well, speaking of which, but Mark, you kind of, you compose quickly and on the fly. I mean, do you tend to sort of try and spurge it all out in one go, or do you kind of leave little snippets for yourself?
No, I've got hours and hours and hours of these weird recordings. But the thing is, of course, because I've got this philosophy head on as well, I've got hours of things that go, oh, try this. And the bass line's got to go boom, 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 boom. I should have guitars on it. And it's all really excited. And then the melody should be la, la, la. And of course, I can't sing brilliantly. And then the next one is, I've just worked out that the whole thing behind consciousness is this. So if you listen through my my dictaphone, it just jumps from thing to thing to thing. But I do recommend getting either a yak number, which is a number you can call up and it sends a WAV file to your email. That always works quite well for me, because then you ring up and you're not disturbing anyone, because you're sort of phoning from, or are you phoning from your bed in the middle of the night to your own answering machine?
Or dictaphone, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've got hours and hours and hours of it, but are we still doing Bowie? Are we talking about
yeah.
Bowie?
Sorry, we were still doing Bowie. Yeah, but you can comment on Bowie as well, of course. Sorry, I rambled.
The rhythm in that song is so Bowie in a weird sort of way, but it's not any of the sounds he's used before. But there's a sort of a flavour of his character to that rhythm. So when I'm listening to it, it reminds me of lots of things that he's done in the past, and it almost sounds like somebody trying to be Bowie, because it's been so long since I've really listened to anything that he's done in that style that it seems like it's almost like it's someone trying to be Bowie who can't quite cut it in a weird way. And because he must have something going on with his teeth as well, because it's there's a no, seriously, I mean, my ear picks these things up, and there's a slight buzz to the edge of some of his diction that sounds like, I've either had my teeth done and his teeth have changed, or he's wearing false teeth. And I'm not saying that that's not meant to be derogatory in any way, shape, or form. It's just something that I've noticed, and I quite like the song.
I think that,
Rich again.
I think the 14 it's going to be a 14-track album, so that you're getting good value for money.
That's weird in itself.
Well,
I mean,
but
does anybody else do album? It's sort of we're all.
Well, actually, they do. It's interesting. I was looking at track counts on a lot of pop stuff, and now, mainstream stuff actually has more tracks on it. You're supposed to give more value. I mean, the pressure on the artist to come up with all sorts of stuff to sell, bonuses, extra tracks, unreleased B-sides, a cappella versions, whatever. I mean, you must find this, Jem, when you've done something or had done something in pop, it's like, right, now we need another 12 tracks. We need an MP3 to give away with the ice cream tie-up we've done with, Lolly, whoever it is, do you know what I mean? And all that you've just got endless things to kind of come up and regurgitate and what have you. And that seems to be, you have to just more product, please, more and more of it.
Yeah, and I think it's not necessarily a good thing, because it's kind of you can write 3 or 4 good songs, and if that's what you've got, you should just leave it there. Otherwise, you've kind of got 6 tracks of bilge, and it's this sort of this thing of I always have when albums now. I have this sort of I can decide as a mathematical equation whether I like the album or not if I like 50% of the tracks, because that's kind of about as much as you can hope to get now out of an album that I think is kind of is an acceptable level of good songwriting. And it is this the 5/1 mix and this, and then there's all these the a cappella versions are released, and this is the other thing. It's kind of I'm telling you an old man. I'll tell you something else I don't like.
Acoustic version, of course. Let's not forget that.
Well, it's the kind of the culture of the cult of the remix in some respects. It's I kind of think some of these remixes are so good they should just be songs. It shouldn't really necessarily have to be kind of ordered to remix somebody else's music. It's sort of, I mean, I've done a few of them, and they're good exercises, but then it almost makes you think, well, what's the real version for then? If you can have actually the single, and then there's like 10 mixes of it, 10 versions of it. It's sort of,
yeah, I get that. It's like I found there was a track that I really liked. It was Zed, and it's called Spectrum. And I just thought the production on it, we talked about it on the podcast, it really kind of blew me away, But then I went to look for it, and there were about 9 million versions of it, and I didn't know which was the one that I needed to listen to get, because I'd heard a snippet elsewhere, and they're all these different, that is complex. I mean, but I'm guilty, I mean, I've done a lot of remixing in the past, and yet that's what happens. I mean, and when you start to get what is effectively the A side, whatever that is, the radio edit or whatever, then that's what people hear. But there are so many different ways that track can become in focus in so many different markets. It's hard to know which one it is that you're after.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Is trying to find something on YouTube, for example. It's like thousands of versions, and you just think, I can't be bothered. Or the other worst one is you hear a remix of it, and that's the version that you like, and then you actually sort of get the track and you think, well, that's not the version I like, and then you can never find that remix again. So you sort of like get that one chance to find it. It's just very, I don't know, it's less is more, I think, with a lot of this stuff.
I know that's true. I'm guilty of that one. That one happened, yes, on something I worked on. The quote was, so I bought the album, but it's not there. The track's not there, and did it fall out or something? Yeah.
My missus, straight away. She was so upset when she bought that album and your mix wasn't on it.
Oh, well, never mind.
What? Where is it? Can I just, I'll issue, we were saying about, what do you use to put your ideas down on stuff? Phone, the iPhone dictaphone is absolutely brilliant, but I should offer one word of warning. So I do quite a lot in the car. If I'm driving around, I'll just put the thing on, and there's a lot of ranting and there's a lot of weirdness goes on. And then I synced it with my iTunes.
Right.
And all my voice notes ended up in iTunes, and we had
Brilliant.
people round for dinner.
Random playlist.
And it just went straight from, it was on shuffle, and it went straight from, I don't know, some decent track into me ranting about 4x4s and the woman looking down on all the people she abhors and all this stuff. And it was just like,
Linton Kwesi Spears there.
Yeah, it really was. It was like, yes. So it was nice to see everyone this evening. And,
That's
thanks
awesome.
for coming.
That's a great. That's one of the. That's a great one, isn't it? That's just sort of brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I think if I can find a show title out of that experience somewhere, I'm going to have to try very hard, because that just sounds like one of those things that you got to watch out for that sort of stuff.
It's
There is
so
a little trick to save yourself from that. And that is if you highlight them all and then you go into the info pane and you turn them all into books, they get taken out of that shuffling playlist, and they think that if you make them think they're audio books, they go into a different place in iTunes and don't.
That's quite cool. There was just this. It was just this absolutely wonderful moment where I realised what was going on, and you just can't. Chris once sent an email that he really shouldn't have done. He meant to send it to me, forward it, but he pressed
Should
return.
I write this? I'm really tempted to write this.
He literally chased the cable across the room like this. And it was one of those moments where I realised it, and actually so did Freya. There you go.
Yikes!
Word
That's
of
a good
advice.
One. That is yes. That email that you're sending to somebody else to say, I'm really tempted to send this to them, but I know I shouldn't, and then you realise you've actually sent it to them instead. Yeah, very poor practice.
It only generally happens once, doesn't it?
Yes, I nearly had that moment today, actually, but I'll tell you about that off air. The other thing, I know, Jem, you were saying that you were interested in talking about the Nine Inch Nails are coming back on stream, aren't they? There's going to be some summer dates and a little bit of stadium action.
Hooray!
But Trent Reznor, pictured in it looking rather like a very aggressive banker, is working with Adrian Belew, who is one of my all-time great guitar heroes and very massively unsung. I know Gaz is a big fan of Adrian Belew, so that
Mine
work he
too.
King
Adrian
Crimson,
Belew,
absolutely awesome.
Me too.
Have you got some kind of amusing anecdote you can tack to this topic, or is it just you wanted to let us know about it?
No, it was just more that kind of the sort of Adrian Belew element. It's just such a kind of brilliant fusion of minds, because he is a massively underrated guitarist. And I love what he does. I mean, those King Crimson albums, those early '80s ones, are the definitive Crimson albums for me.
Oh yeah,
and it's just that kind of to have that in that kind of angry chaos that is Trent Reznor. It's just what a brilliant fusion. I'm so excited by it.
Maybe you'll get him to sing as well, because he's got a great voice. I love that pure tone he's got. He used to play with Zappa as well. Do you know that? He had a couple of... and that is a signifier of how good a guitarist he must be, because you don't get to play with Zappa unless you're like Steve Vai, which I believe there's a connection there with you as well.
Well, there is. It's an interesting thing with the Zappa thing. It's because it kind of... chatting to Steve, it's this weird thing. It's almost like a sort of Vietnam mentality. It's almost like, you weren't there, man. You weren't there. It's this. They all sort of talk about it as if it was the most stressful period of their lives, because he just they'd rehearsed for hours, and it literally was just merciless and relentless musicality. And they are all. It's because I know Mike Keneally as well, the keyboard player guitarist, who was also in Zappa's band, because I replaced him doing keys for Joe, which is how the whole thing happened. But it's this funny thing. You kind of got to them and go, Zappa. They all get a bit.
Don't remind me. Well, I've seen Zappa a couple of times. I can't try. It's probably about the time of Witch Too Late to Save a Drowning, Ship Too Late to Save a Drowning Witch, that kind of period. But he still played other stuff. And frankly, he was, the band were amazingly drilled. But it just seemed to be a vehicle for his obsession and mania to a degree, which is kind of, it's all about him, and fair enough. But looking back on it now, I can kind of see how maybe being in that experience might have been less than pleasurable, because you wouldn't be going out and partying and stuff, because you'd be just so terrified you'd get something wrong.
Yeah, I think that's what actually Vi did say that during that period he was actually very depressed. It was personally a very depressing time. and it's kind of it's sort of it must have been just. I mean, it's just that kind of level of intensity. I'm not sure anyone could sustain it for more than a couple of years.
No, I mean, I guess that's why there's a turnover. I mean, it's not like the kind of the early days of Jimmy Carl Black and the Mothers of Invention, all that, which was the sort of more like almost comedy records, if you like.
Yeah.
But yeah,
interesting. But anyway, Baloo, 9 Inch Nails. Thumbs up.
No, brilliant. And I don't know where. I think this tour, we put up a news item about it today, and it was it's going out sort of into 2014 and doing that stuff. I know John Van Eaton, who's in the chat room from time to time, was worked as one of the techs for. Yes, he's there today for Nine Inch Nails and Trent, and and I'm sure it's a very similar level of focus because I mean he's very much in control of the whole package, but perhaps not quite so mad as Frank, perhaps, I don't know, or as detailed, because the music is presumably less, well, I am supposing an awful lot, just somewhat less taxing, and the back catalogue perhaps not as large as Zappa, which is...
well, it's kind of that interesting. I think if Baloo's in it, that kind of infers that there is music being made. There is going to be an album to support the tour, and I just think there's that kind of... I think with somebody as kind of esoteric as Baloo, what's that going to do to the Nine Inch Nails sound? That's what's exciting, I think.
Well, it's interesting. It's very interesting. I'm big fan of Adrian Belew, definitely. And in fact, it's very hard to find because I only have the early King Crimson stuff on vinyl, and I don't remember a lot of it coming out on CDs even. And you can't find it anywhere now. The only place to find it is on YouTube, sort of ripped stuff. And I had a bit of a session listening here the other day, just cranking it up, and I just thought, God, that is great stuff. I mean, it's the acceptable face of 80s music in a lot of ways, but purely guitar and obviously samples. And Dave, you worked with Bruford, didn't you? So
yeah, and I nearly worked with Baloo, and but I mean, Elephant Talk is just such a gem. You can keep the early Crimson stuff as far as I'm concerned. That's for kind of
Lark's Tongue. It's a great. The Lark's Tongue aspect is it's a great album cover, isn't it? But that's it.
Yeah, and I like Bruford's work around that period. The Simmons stuff was pretty creative, and it was really good. Levin, and I mean, it just works. It just all worked for that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be interesting to see what he's got. In fact, if you look on YouTube, there are some amazing acoustic versions of Baloo playing some Crimson songs, and you sort of think, oh, that's nice, and then you're thinking, hold on a minute, he's actually playing that really complicated time signature all over the neck and singing the song effortlessly at the same time. Wait a minute. And when you kind of stop and think about that, you just think, wow, that really is just sort of mind-bogglingly impressive, in terms of
he must be an alien.
Ability.
It looks a bit like an alien, didn't it, at times?
Yes, there are some less flattering videos of him also, where he was sort of sweaty and unkempt. But anyway, we were going to finish with Mark actually came up with... You sent a link in about you were giving the gerbil a treat.
I was. Well, you asked that question earlier on. You said, do you start writing music these days with piano and guitar, or how do you sort of start off?
Or gerbil.
So I started with a gerbil because the other day I was with my son, putting my son to bed, and we gave the gerbil some water, and then I said, "Have you given him a treat?" And he said, "Oh, no." And I pinged the bar of the cage, and I was like, wow, that's a brilliant noise. And then I realized that because they're all, laid out parallel like strings, that they're all very slightly different lengths and thicknesses depending on how they've been painted. So as I pinged across them, they were all slightly different pitches. And then I thought the microtonal aspect of this is also interesting. So I put my Zoom recorder inside the cage and plucked each of the different bars on the cage and recorded lots of different ones, and laid them out across the keyboard. And I started with that, and then I created a song around it.
Hamster step, as the chat room is fantastic stuff.
Ham step.
I'm liking it. Well, I think we're probably, it is time's moved on. I want to say, what I'm going to do is going to play out on that, but before I do, I'm going to say goodbye and thank you to everybody. And we'll go first to Jem Godfrey there in East Sussex. Sorry about that.
You're very welcome. It's got very dark where you are, Mark. What's going on? The sun's not set with me and Dave, but...
The meter's went out.
I don't know, actually.
It's a nuclear winter. I don't know what's happened there. Yeah, it has got dark.
Thank you for having me. It's been brilliant.
Anytime, and thank you very much. So if you ever, I'll keep you dialed in on the topics, and feel free to join us at any time you like. It's been a pleasure having you. I can pick your brains on your experiences as well. And also we've got Dave Spears there over in his synth layer. I see you've got the OBs back together again.
Yeah. That's all done, and the sequence is great. I've been mucking about with this one today. I've been putting sounds in this for the Kasabian guys.
What's that? Is that a 6-track?
It's a multi-track.
Multi-track. Oh.
Which is kind of weird. So I've been doing that. I'm having a bit of fun with that while listening to the. I don't even remember who it's on. While the sequence has been running on that.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, I've been editing. We shot 30 Boss pedal reviews over the weekend, so I've been editing 18 different types of distortion, which
excellent
in singleness is fine, but once you get to the 18th, the DS3 or the OD10 or whatever, it's just like, they all sound the same, but no, they don't. So that's a series that's coming out. We're going to be doing one pedal every day for a month. Wow. Over March, I think, starting Friday, assuming it all goes to plan. That's the idea, anyway. So,
excellent.
So, folks, did I say goodbye to you, Mark? I can't remember if I did. I will now.
You didn't.
Mark in the dark.
I think it's because I'm on the East Coast and you're all over there in the sort of the Bath end of the world on the West. No, you're not, though, are you? You said you were in East Sussex. I don't know why it's so dark in Bedfordshire.
Well, Jem, you have actually got some lights on as well.
I'll move.
These are mere details.
Thank you very much anyway, Mark. Mark Tinley Light Being. You can tvmania.com. Is that what it's called?
No, tvmaniamusic.com.
tvmaniamusic.com. Yeah. And but in the meantime, we're going to play you out with a little bit of Gerbil Rock.